Good.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, but more particularly and more importantly, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your host, Yusuf Ismail, together with my co-host, Brother Muhammad, is not with us directly in the stream, but he's backstage. And this evening, once again, for part two, we are joined and we have the privilege of having Imam Muhammad Al-Asi. For those of you who have been watching these streams over the past couple of months, you probably know that Imam Al-Asi is a research fellow at the Institute of Contemporary Islamic Thought. He's currently working on the first ever English tafsir of the Quran entitled The Ascendant Quran, Realigning Man to the Divine Power Culture. If you don't have a copy of it, I urge you to get a copy. I think about approximately 11 volumes of this tafsir has been published. And I think in 2022, we had a bulky edition that I had with me. And I showed this our viewers some time back. And I urge all of you to get it. So, Assalamu alaikum, Imam Al-Asi. I do understand that your time's at a premium. It's good to have you back again.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening.
Oh, the privilege is ours. Let me start off. Since we last spoke a couple of weeks back, so much has happened. And I think more particularly tying out what's been happening in Gaza over the past couple of months, and now particularly what has happened in Syria. Some see it as a revolution. Some see it as a kind of a regime change. I think you and I heard Brother Zafar Bangash a couple of weeks back mention the point. I don't think there is a debate, to put that disclaimer out there, that Syria has been ruled by an abysmal dictatorial dynasty over the past 50 years. I don't think anyone has qualms over the fact that Bashar al-Assad and his father, Hafez al-Assad, both Alawites, have been ruling it with an iron fist. My first question to you is, we've had a situation that HTS has taken over together with our other groups. They've been classified as a terrorist organization. But essentially, you see a situation that dynasty has been totally removed, totally eliminated. What is your position on the recent deposing of Assad in Syria? And were you in any way surprised?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. First, I'd like to begin by congratulating the Syrian people and population for having rid themselves of a tyrannical ruling class. The rulers in Syria in the past, they took over technically in 1963, but this variety of them, Hafez al-Assad and his son, Bashar al-Assad, have been in power since 1970. So that gives you a total of 54 years of them playing politics at the expense, playing politics that are of self-interest at the expense of the Syrian people, the overwhelming majority of the Syrian people. There's a lot to be said about what has happened, what is still happening, and what may happen in the coming weeks and months and potentially years. The situation is in a fluid flux status, and we have some indications that even though the getting rid of the Ba'athi regime in Damascus is definitely a moment of celebration, but that's in the compartment of our emotions. In the compartment of our brain and thinking, The scenario does not look promising. The current, let's say, officials, let's call them officials, and they're referred to in the mainstream media as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS. These are individuals who have different types of Islamic backgrounds. Most of them, though, it appears, most of them belong to the mainstream Islamic movement in the Arab countries, and that is Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin. And it seems like this is the engine of what may become a consolidated Syrian government. But that has yet to gel. It might, and we hope it can be done successfully. But as I said at the beginning, there are other factors that point to disaster down the road. Let me explain some things. There's so many things to be explained, by the way, and I hope I don't lose anyone. Syria itself is a very mosaic society. It's made up of different ethnicities, different religious denominations, and different political tendencies. All of these come together in this territory called Syria. The people themselves, and I'm half Syrian, half Lebanese, from those who don't know. And Lebanon, by the way, is part of Syria. It's just the Sykes-Picot victory in World War I that carved up geographical Syria into 4 nation states: Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. In fact, the population themselves are one population. But anyways, the Syria that we are looking at right now, geographical Syria that everyone refers to, is currently being sliced. There's an attempt to consolidate a breakaway northeastern part of Syria. That's where the Kurds have been in control with the help of the American Central Intelligence Agency, the Israeli Mossad, and probably maybe MI6 or some others who want Syria to be divided, want Syria to be separated from itself. It's not enough that after World War I, they truncated that landmass of currently 4 nation states into different political entities. Now they want to take the major one of those 4, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Palestine. The major one of those 4 is Syria. Now they want to divide Syria into a Kurdish state in the northeast of the country, a Alawite state on the Mediterranean coast, that would be in the northwest of the country, a Durzi state in the southern part of the country, and then whatever is left, the pulp of it, would be ruled by Sunni Muslims. Unfortunately, I don't like to use these ethnic and sectarian words, but the facts on the ground force us to use these words because many officials have fallen into these nationalists and sectarian traps. That's all they are. And there's no indication on the horizon that there is enough maturity. And some of these officials have gone on record and expressed themselves to the media And you can sense from some of their statements that they are living a nationalist sectarian dichotomy, unfortunately. And that's on one side. On the other side, they are pinning their hopes on enemies of the Muslims who have a proven record in intensifying the conflicts among the Muslims. To be more specific, that's in the general sense of the word. To be more specific, and I've been listening and I've been tuning in to some of the comments and some of the analyses of what's going on in Syria. And it seems like unless someone has access to intelligence files and state secrets, the main issue, the elephant in the room, is being avoided. No one wants to speak about what is being planned for the future. Besides, the fancy and the sweet statements concerning, there's going to be money coming in from certain sources, and there's going to be the pipeline that's going to be extended, and there's going to be a rebuilding of the Syrian infrastructure and all of this. Those are fancy statements. Hiding behind those fancy statements are very vicious and ugly plans to carve out of Syria at least 3 or 4 what they will call independent, but in fact will become antagonistic political entities. Let me begin, because most of the concentration, most of the attention now is concentrated on Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, as it's abbreviated. Yeah. Most of the attention is on them. Now, who are we talking about when we talk about Hayat Tahrir al-Sham? The first person who is highlighted, and all others are insignificant compared to him. And this by itself tells you that, the media right now is running the show. There's no substance here. It's all fluff. So who is this person? There's been quite a few conjectures about who he is, or, where he comes from. But it appears, from what I can tell and from what I can almost ascertain, he comes from the southern part of Syria, the Daraa area. That's where, back in 2011, that's where the movement against the Syrian regime began. And he is a distant cousin of another person called Farouk al-Shara. Farouk al-Shara used to be, for many years, maybe 10 or 15 years, I don't know exactly, but for many years, he used to be the foreign minister, the Ba'athi, secular, nationalist, socialist foreign minister of the Syrian regime. He also occupied for some time, for some long years, the position of vice president of the Syrian Arab Republic. So at the beginning of the 2011 civil instability in Syria, there were some meetings that were initially held in Damascus, and Farouk al-Shara, not Ahmed al-Shara, Farouk al-Shara, the old-time Ba'athi, attended those meetings, and he had a fallout with his comrades, with his Ba'athi comrades. So he was sidelined, and he sort of went into oblivion. No one knows. They say he was for some time under house arrest. They say his movements were confined and limited and all of this other stuff. But anyways, now he sort of met with his cousin, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, or Ahmed al-Shara, Farouk al-Shara now, the old hand Ba'athi person, meeting with Ahmed Shara, right now the figure that everyone is seeing on their TVs and however way they tune into the news, to try to bring about some type of Syrian togetherness between what you may call those who have an Islamic leaning and those who have a secular leaning, whatever the varieties may be, because the Islamic leanings has quite a few varieties to it, and the secular leaning also has quite a few varieties to it. So, and that's good. That's fine. We want everyone who's good at heart and can think clearly wants the Syrian people to come together. Well, bravo for any effort that wants to consolidate the ranks of the Syrian people. But are they doing this on their own, or are they being prompted to do this? And this is where the invisible hand is at work. I may say that the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, anyone who wants to say that it is not getting its instructions in the general sense of the word, we're not talking about day to day what to do today, but as far as policy and strategy is concerned, it's very I think it should be very well known that it is an extension of the Turkish nation state. And the Turks themselves, there's always been this undisclosed animosity between the rulers in Damascus and the rulers in Ankara, Turkey. And that has to do with border issues. The regime in Damascus used to be supportive of the PKK. These are this is a very extremist left-wing movement that wants to establish a Kurdish nation state that will become the state of the Kurds who live in Turkey, in Syria, and in Iraq. And they've been in a struggle for many years, and the Turks are the Turkish officials are the ones who are most sensitive to the Kurdish nationalist aspirations, because a good chunk of the Turkish population, those who have Turkish citizenship, are ethnically Kurds living in the southeast of the country. And they live in considerable numbers elsewhere. So this is a matter of Turkish national security, what is happening in Syria when it comes to the Kurds. When it comes to, on the other side, on the Syrian side of the let's say, buried tension between these two countries, is the area in Turkey. In Syria, it would be in the northwest of Syria. In Turkey, it would be in the southwest. The Turks call it Hatay. The Arab Ba'athis call it Iskandaron. So the Arab Ba'athis, in their ideology, they believe that once the Arab nation is united from Morocco to Iraq, that they have to claim Iskandaron from Turkey. I'm sure the Turks are aware of this. I'm sure the Syrians should be aware of this. Many others may not be aware of this.
Is this secular Arab nationalism? Would this be kind of the secular Arab nationalist Baathi ideology at play? Certainly not an Islamic one.
Yeah, exactly. But it's only peculiar to the Arab Ba'ath party. There are, the Arab nationalists. There's a couple of other trends in Arab nationalism. But this particular one was peculiar to those who were ruling in Iraq and those who were ruling in Damascus. And now that we're on the subject, the Ba'ath Arab nationalist ideology also says, and listen to this, it also says that there's the southern part of Iran that the Iranians call Khuzestan, but in the Arab Ba'athi ideology, they call it Arabistan. And they say Arabistan belongs to the Arab nation. It does not belong to Iran. Now, with all of this going on, remember the decision makers in Tehran had very comfortable relationship with the decision makers in Damascus. Now, did they know, did they do their homework and discover that the Arab nationalists, Bashar al-Assad and all of his ideological colleagues, they have their eyes set in the future on liberating a part of Iran to become part of the Arab nation? On different occasions in all these past years, because I can see with the help of Allah, I can see the merits in Iran and I can see the demerits in Iran also. And the same thing about the Islamic movement in Turkey and the Islamic movement in Arab countries. I can see their merits and I can see their demerits. So in the previous years, when I pointed this out to some of the pro-Islamic revolution brothers and sisters on occasions, when I pointed this out, they just went totally silent. And that silence to me said that there is a sectarian issue involved in this.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, we have to liberate ourselves from this sectarianism, because in the coming, the Zionists and the imperialists in the coming years, in the coming months, what they are going to try to do, they are going to try to work on this sectarian issue in addition to the nationalist issue. And they're going to try, Syria, they're going to try to have it as a fuse that will ignite the other areas and the other territories where both Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims have not outgrown this type of misleading sectarianism.
Let me ask you this point and this question, and I appreciate your perspective, which is, a lot of things which I've never heard of, never knew, and I'm sure the viewers haven't. But for years, at least for the past decade, and in fact, I think even before that, one could even talk about the beginning or during the early parts of the 20th century, Syria's balkanization, once it was formed as a state, but the idea of its balkanization as a kind of a realistic option, there's always been some sort of talk, particularly from the Western nation states like the United States, of course, the United Kingdom, and the usual suspects, that could somehow or the other be imposed upon that particular country, which obviously would result in the ousting of Bashar al-Assad, who both of us have agreed was just in any event a brutal dictator, just like Saddam Hussein was, but all of us were in opposition of the Iraqi war. The question of Syria's partition at this particular point in time still remains, in a manner of speaking, unresolved. And of course, you've got the so-called transitional government's ability to, maintain Syria's unity. That will obviously be a critical factor. My question to you is that, looking at Giuliani, I don't know this, I haven't heard of this chap, more before this particular conflict in greater degree of detail. But from what we've seen, what happened in the first few weeks, first in Idlib, and then, of course, extending to Aleppo, we haven't seen the kind of outbreaks, and tell me if I'm wrong, of sectarian violence. Minorities have apparently been allowed to go home. Um, you've had Alawites and the Druze community and Shiites and of course the Sunnis. There's been no kind of sectarian attack on them. And this is quite ironical, taking into account of the fact that Jolani himself was at some point said to be part of a previous organization and then formerly part of Al-Qaeda, which was, inherently, fascistic and indeed extremist in its outlook. But, I sent you that clip early today. The entire makeup of the so-called transitional government seems to be one that is non-sectarian. What does your magic ball tell you about this? Bearing in mind that, of course, there are other players that are clearly out there. I mean, more of the Golan Heights has been taken now than has ever been during the height of Assad's dictatorship. But do you see the sincerity of this movement, or are they just simply a tool that are being used for the time being till something else happens?
That's a good question. And one does not negate the other. I have no doubt that some of these individuals in Hayat Tahrir al-Sham are very sincere, and they want to make up for lost time as far as their own people and the citizenry of Syria. I have no doubt that they are very sincere. Some of them are very sincere. But I also have no doubt that they are, let's use the word, macro-managed by their handlers. And their handlers, to be blunt about it, are in Turkey and in Qatar. These are the immediate ones who have, you may say now, from now onwards, day-to-day influence upon those who make up the selected officials who are going to be in charge of the Syrian state. And that's where here is where only time will tell. Is it the sincerity of these individuals who really want to do the right thing, referring to Allah subhanahu and the Prophet? May Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. They really want to do this, but that's part of it. The other part of it is, how are you going to go about doing that? Yes, I agree with you. So far, we haven't seen any of those bloody imageries that we saw about 12 years ago when they were, they called themselves jihadis.
Or ISIS. I mean, we don't see the remnants of ISIS, although some of them were inevitably part of ISIS.
That's right. And this is the danger here, because they did not disappear. Those who really want to chop off heads and they want to,
kill Muslims for that matter, or any other person, minorities for that matter.
Yeah.
They still there.
They all of the ugly things that they did previously, and they were on a confrontational course with those who have power in Syria and those who are supporting the regime that had power in Syria. They were on a military confrontation course, and that military confrontation course did not go well. And it ended up with the Asitana meeting of the Turks and the Iranians and the Syrians, with the Russians, of course, involved. And they sort of agreed that, we're going to put down our arms, everyone stay in their positions, whether you are Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in the Idlib area, or whether you are the rulers in Damascus, or whether you are the Kurds in the Qamishli al-Jazeera area, that's the northeast of Syria, wherever you are, no more of this fighting going on, and we'll try to deal with all of these issues in every way except for fighting. So that's the way that ended. And so they graduated from that decades-long failure. They graduated from that. That's not the way things are going to work out. Things are going to work out if we all come together, regardless of our ethnicity and our denomination and our religion. We all are Syrians, and we have to come together to build this Syrian house together. Now, they are taking a leaf out of the Turkish book. And those who are watching this Syrian chapter unfold in Washington and in Tel Aviv in particular, there are many people watching right now. And now there are delegations that are arriving in Damascus, one plane in, one plane out. This has been going on for the past week, and it's going to, the tempo is going to increase in the coming weeks. And so the unspoken agreement, the way I read it, is the US and Israel telling Turkey, we don't have any problems if the type of Islam that you have in Turkey is going to be the type of Islam that's going to be implemented in Syria. If you want to go down that route, we can live with that. There's no problem. But you're not, you Turks, you are ruling in Turkey. You're the Islamic types, but you're not fanatic against minorities. You know, you have your Kurdish problem and all of this, and that's been going on for a long time. But you're not, slitting the throats of Christians or, accusing other Muslims of different denominations of being apostates and heathens and all of this other stuff. Yeah, so if this type of thing can take hold in Syria, well, we'll leave it up to you. We'll have you in charge. You in Ankara and Istanbul, you take charge of this, and that's why you saw these are more or less seasoned individuals. The foreign minister of Turkey and the intelligence minister of Turkey, they were the first high-ranking officials to arrive in Damascus last week. So that speaks volumes. It tells you, and that's fine. No one should have any argument with Syria becoming entering the sphere of Turkish influence. I have no problems with it. Just like on the other side, because Iraq is also connected with Syria. And if there was enough maturity without the nationalist and sectarian bugs, we could say, okay, we can live with Iraq being in the Iranian sphere of influence, and we can live with Turkey being in the Turkish sphere of influence. But we have to do this by sitting down and understanding the rules of the game without friction and without fighting. But it just has not reached that level of maturity. We just have not reached that level of maturity. And I maintain this, the days will prove this one way or the other. I maintain, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, that the most dangerous issue that is lurking, no one wants to talk about it, is a Sunni Shi'i war that these people who don't sleep their nights thinking about how to steal our resources. All of this has to do with resources. If Syria was desert land, no one would pay much attention to it. But because of its geography, and because of its natural resources, and because of its location, then, everyone wants to have Syria serve their own national interests. The Russian.
Let me ask you this, Imam, because you've made it quite clear that, with this collapse of the Assad dynasty now, you have a situation of Iran and potentially Hezbollah's withdrawal, Russia's growing uncertainty in that particular area. There was a strong presence. The big elephant in the room, besides, of course, Turkey emerging as one of the major beneficiaries of Assad's fall, would not the big elephant striking us all would be that Israel has now also emerged as somehow or the other. Some people, and particularly those on the left end of the spectrum within the sphere of political analysis, have mentioned that Israel now in fact controls swathes of southern Syria, the entire Golan Heights. Of course, we can talk about the Persian Gulf states, and of course, Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. There's a kind of a concern on the one hand, and steps are being taken to counterbalance the growing power of HTS. They don't know what creature Jolani is. But I remember in 2015 when you came to South Africa on one of your lectures you delivered, and back then it was just after the heights of the Arab Spring, and we had the ISIS situation in Syria. Your main point was, in all these conflicts, check the Israeli connection. And so my question to you now is that you had something like about 800 strikes on Syria, more now than has ever been over the past 2 or 3 decades. 800 strikes, the entire military infrastructure totally destroyed by Israel. Golan Heights virtually swollen up by Israel. Has HTS not benefited the emergence in Syria? Because that's what the critics of HTS are saying. But the counter argument is that Assad himself was in no way a significant threat to Israel's hegemony in the area. What's your take on that?
Well, now that you bring up the issue, it's true. What I said back then, about 9 or 10 years ago, still is true today. You take a look at how Israel is behaving in the middle of all of this, and when you take a look at Israel, you should notice that Israel has been barking for the past 25 to 30 years that the major enemy of the whole region is the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's Netanyahu is wild in presenting that idea everywhere and anywhere he goes. At the United Nations, if he's visiting a certain capital in the world, if he's having a ministerial meeting with his cabinet, anywhere, everywhere, his central theme is the Islamic Republic of Iran is our main enemy. And all of these others, like when you speak about Hezbollah or you speak about Al-Hashd al-Shabi in the popular mobilization in Iraq, or Ansarullah, better known in the mainstream media as the Houthis, these are all proxies of the major enemy, and the major enemy is Iran. Now, they want to put the Israeli thinking politicians, they think with evil, they want to put Iran in a sectarian box so that they can gain the popularity that they would need if significant military operations commenced against Iran. And they are trying right now to raise the level of urgency, saying that Iran is on the cusp of finalizing its nuclear program. So we have to strike it before it puts its final touches on a nuclear bomb. And if they can manage, and this would be due to the ignorance of we the Muslims, I don't care whether you call yourself Sunni or Shia, if we have this type of sectarianism in us, that's going to play to the advantage of the Zionists in Tel Aviv. There's a statement today that I read that really doesn't, it's not a comfortable thing to read or to know. And that is, Al-Julani himself said that the Persians, I think he used the word Iranians, have brought to the Levant, which means greater Syria, they brought to us a 1400-year issue that we have nothing to do with. So the inference here is the Iranians hold us guilty for what happened to Al-Imam Al-Hussein and to Zainab and to the rest of the descendants of the Prophet. Yeah, so giving, you're here, you haven't said a word against Israel. And the first thing that's coming out of you now, I mean, it's mild, but it certainly discloses what you may have on your mind. and which is
But here's a question. As far as I understand, they've made it clear, I think Jolani has made it clear, that they will not allow Syrian territory to be the kind of center point for any attacks on Israel. I do understand that any kind of Hamas, I wouldn't say headquarters, but anyone said to be affiliated with Hamas will not be allowed in that particular region to launch attacks. Hezbollah will not in any way use Syrian territory as a means or kind of a transitory element to get weapons or weaponry or anything along that particular line for further attacks on Israel. Is that an issue? Because the criticism against that argument is that Hezbollah, in any event, whenever using Syria or any territory of Syria as a means to launch attacks against the state of Israel. So, I mean, could the argument not be made that perhaps Jolani is being pragmatic, or in the sense that I understand there's a genocide? Their argument is that, look, they don't want to get involved in another conflict because they will be totally obliterated by Israel.
Well, as I said, time will tell. These early statements are not enough to draw a broad conclusion. The stages right now are being set. Everything is still in its baby steps. There's nothing here that, of course, everyone can understand that the Syrian population has been drained in every sense of the word, economically, socially, psychologically, politically. Any way you look at it, the Syrian population has been drained. The only population in the area drained more than the Syrians are the Palestinians. So, and here's where, the dichotomy sets in. Some people think if you are sort of feeling the predicament that the Syrian population is in, you sort of isolate yourself from the Palestinians. And if you are feeling the predicament that the Palestinians are in, you are sort of isolating yourself from the Syrians. Mm-hmm. That need not be. Who said? Yeah. Who said if I am going to understand the plight of the Syrians, I'm not going to understand, or I'm going to stop understanding the plight of the Palestinians, or vice versa? It doesn't go that way. As I said at the beginning, these are one people. It's just this the fragmentation in our mind when we begin to classify, oh, these are Palestinians. This policy is pharaonic. It goes back to the Pharaoh's days. Inna Fir'auna ala fil ardi wa ja'ala ahlaha shi'a. Pharaoh reached a superpower status in the world by having the population decimated and divided and separated from each other. You use any tool you want to do that, as long as you achieve your objective. And that's what the Israelis are doing. And their ace in the hole is sectarianism. They are banking on sectarianism. You will hear this more and more as the months go by. I have to say that as far as Turkey is concerned, there hasn't been any strong vibes of sectarianism coming out of Turkey. That's a plus for the decision makers there pertaining to this particular issue. But that's not the case when you come to those who are in the Arabian Peninsula or the Persian Gulf. These people carry a lethal dose of sectarianism in them. And they are the ones right now in today's news. There's a Saudi delegation of about 40 individuals. 40 individuals who have arrived in Damascus to take the pulse, to see where is this thing going. The Saudis looked around and they saw the Qataris are in on this, and they're, in the front line. Turkey is in on this, and they're in the front line in Syria, and they don't want to be, considered winners.
Would you say, Imam, that apparently the fear is that Riyadh and Abu Dhabi are fearing the so-called return of political Islam, heavily backed by Ankara and, as you mentioned, Doha, through a kind of a Damascus-led gateway, but simultaneously at the same time, as you say, testing the pulse, they see a chance to strengthen their possible investments in these opposition groups to secure possible influence in shaping Syria's next ruling structure.
Yeah, that's right, because everyone is looking at their survival and their national interest. Yeah. The ruler.
But is this? I mean, I just want to say, ideologically, I mean, we don't know where this group stands. We really don't know where this group stands. Hamas, for example, ideologically comes from the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, ideological base, but with Jolani and HTS and some of the other factions, I mean, we're dealing with unknown creatures who are kind of a mixture of various factions, ranging from Khawarij to merging with the Ba'athist ideology. I mean, you really don't know what creature you're dealing with.
Well, let me correct you on that. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is an enhancement of what used to be called Jabhat al-Nusra.
Which was formerly Al-Qaeda. That was formerly Al-Qaeda.
No. There's a difference between ISIS and Daesh and Jabhat al-Nusra and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. These all had their separate programs. They had their separate orientations. They would agree on, general things. We're all Islamic and we want an Islamic governance and Islamic leadership. They'd agree but when you come to the particulars, how do we go about reaching the goal that we all share? And here's where there are those differences. So Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is right now being highlighted by the corporate media, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is an outgrowth of Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, just like Hamas. So they are cousins. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and Hamas are cousins. Mm. And this is another area in which they are going to be tested. If you Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, if you are what you say you are, then why are you not supporting your ideological cousins in colonized Palestine, in Gaza, the West Bank, where the daily atrocity and genocide is taking place? So this is going to be another barometer by which they are going to be tested. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. This is another way of looking at it and say, how are you going to deal with it? The way Turkey deals with it, another way you have to look at this is because the AK party in Turkey also comes from has the general flavor of the Ikhwan, but they've developed a political program whereby they rationalize for themselves political hypocrisy to reach the Islamic end. It's not like they don't understand the issues. Erdogan understands the issues, and those who are with him understand the issues. But they have confidence in the enemies of Islam. I mean, if the United States says to them that, look, we agree with you having your extension in Syria, but make sure that they behave like you behave, meaning make sure that they are political hypocrites. The way they don't say it like this. I'm just being blunt about it. Just make sure that they play politics, they give and take with us, no arms, no bloodshed, none of that stuff going around. And we can win some, we can lose some, they can win some, they can lose some, and let the game continue. So, but all of this right now is foresight. What's going to happen, only the days and the years to come will prove. their mettle. I mean, Syria could turn out to be Afghanistan 2.0. You know what happened in Afghanistan was a chapter that the imperialists and the Zionists learned from. And when you think about it, now those who are ruling in Afghanistan, who put them in that position? Basically, who put them there? It was the Qataris. It was the money of the Gulf that had them, that have right now sit on their seats of power. And this could be repeated in Syria, the same way it was done in Afghanistan. So they could end up with a hybrid Turkish-Afghani development inside of Syria. And they're living with this comfortably. The United States and Israel, they have nothing against Afghanistan. The United States and Israel, they have nothing against Turkey. And if you mesh the two together and bring out some other, fancy dressing of Islam, they won't have any problems with that neither. And so there are two poles you look at. One of them is Israel. How is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, how is it going to act towards Zionism and Israel? That's one barometer. The other barometer is how are they going to act vis-a-vis Hamas and the larger Islamic movement? Mm-hmm. They have to come out and say things about what is the people can give them the benefit of the doubt only for so long. We know Syria is a ruined country. Okay, you need a year or two to build it and catch your breath. Fine. And then what? So you wouldn't take
the route. No, it's not a kind of a criticism, but I heard I think I heard it was Zafar Bangash or somebody who was kind of implying, although not explicitly stating it, that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham are somehow the other American foot soldiers, and he draws the analogy with what happened in Libya when Gaddafi was deposed and linking up with Hillary Clinton. Of course, Iraq when Saddam was removed, and then of course you had the rise of this creature known as ISIS. You wouldn't take that position that these are there put into power by design as some form of deliberate regime change in order to remove whatever minimalist threat Syria had against Israel?
I don't think Israel had anything to worry about when Bashar al-Assad was the ruler of Syria.
That's an important point, Imam, because a lot of people are saying that Bashar was a kind of a thorn in the heel of Israel. But I mean, his response to the genocide over the past several months has been insipid. It's been pathetic, weak, nothing. I haven't even heard of a public statement, unlike the King of Jordan, and even though they've got their own hypocritical stance and position that they maintain, I saw nothing from Syria. And so it belies the notion that HTS is there purely to remove the Syrian threat that Bashar imposed on Israel. There was no threat.
No, the threat was not from Bashar and the Ba'ath Party in Syria.
Yeah.
The threat was from the Islamic Republic of Iran and what is called the Axis of Resistance. The threat was from that. And Bashar, in the middle of all of this, was playing a balancing act. He wanted to maintain something of an axis of resistance, but he also wanted to show the other side, which the Israelis, the Khalijis, the Americans, etc., that he is also on their side. So, there are reports that have come out recently that Syrian intelligence was exchanging information with Israeli intelligence, disclosing the location of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards in Syria and Hezbollah positions in Syria, and the Israelis were raiding these positions, bombing them, And the Syrian military was there. Bashar was there watching all of this, not doing anything.
Did nothing, yeah.
Yeah.
My question to you is that but here's the other question: if HTS had, kind of in a lightning blitzkrieg style, taken over Damascus, we've now seen, and we've clearly seen, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. They've described the Israeli bombing as kind of an earthquake bomb on the Syrian military, the air defense sites, the coastal Tartus region. My question to you is that I understand the Syrian, this group does not have the might or potential to take that on or confront Israel in that capacity. But we've already seen these kind of planned and now already existing illegal settlements in the occupied Golan Heights. The other argument is that why has Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, why have they not done anything in relation to that? It's like as if they just simply allowed it to happen. And the surprise offensive and the energies that they engaged on Damascus couldn't be extended to the Golan Heights. And there's also talk that possibly you may have, Mossad agents and Israeli intelligence officials and aspects of Israeli military infrastructure within the gates of Damascus itself, under the eyes of HTS, and nothing is being done.
Yeah, well, you go back to what I mentioned earlier. If the HTS and those who are with it, if they agree with the Turkish model had diplomatic relations with Israel all of these years. The Turkish model had pipelines of oil transmitted from Azerbaijan to Israel. The Turks had very flourishing trade deals with the Israelis and the Zionists. That's why I tell you, go back. If your Islamic model in Syria is a carbon copy of the Islamic model in Turkey, we don't have any problems with that. Who should have any problems with that? Who would have any problems? Neither the Saudis would have problems, nor the Egyptians would have problems, nor no one would have problems with that. But there's also another element in all of this. We covered a lot of territory, and there's a lot of other territory to be covered. But another element in all of this is, could this, what's happening in Syria, could this give a boost, a shot in the arm to the other Islamic types who are also cousins of Hamas and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in Jordan, in Egypt, in these other areas? Could they now they're watching all of this, said, well, if they did it in Syria, why can't we do it in Egypt or in Jordan? Why can't we have the Turkish model, our model? And then we become the darlings of all of this media and everything that's going on. So basically the testing ground in all of they can be Islamic as far as their personal
outer parameters are concerned.
Yeah, but when it comes to the larger picture, where are you guys? Where are you? What does Islam mean? If you're going to have they're not going to sign, I don't think they will ever sign a peace treaty with Israel, but they can have something like don't bother me, I don't bother you relationship with Israel. And everything else will appear to be Islamic. So the test is in, are you willing to stand for your Islamic principles and Islamic brotherhood and Islamic military, social, ideological principles and responsibilities? Are you going to do that? Or are you going to fool us by, you go to the masjid, you give the khutbah on Friday, you're the leader of the country, you recite some Quran, and you have an Islamic state?
It's very interesting. You said, I take note of the time, and I don't want to end on a controversial note, but I want to raise this, and then I'll leave it at that. Some people and some Muslims, and certainly on this channel, we've seen this in the Dawah circles, and I put Dawah in inverted commas, but there's an entire spectrum of people who call themselves da'is, and it's like popular culture online and on YouTube and so on. They've seen this as a kind of a revolution, and from my perspective, I can see your nuanced, far more knowledgeable position, perspective on the situation. It's far more deeper than just simply a revolution. But here's my question to you. There were comments earlier made by this group where they stated they're going to liberate Al-Quds and go in and liberate Medina and liberate Mecca. What's your take on that? I mean, because there's another side of the equation which states, and again, that's another debate entirely. Maybe we may have another debate on that in future shows, that where there's a structure in place, even if the ruler is oppressive somehow or the other, you shouldn't engage in revolution for fear of potentially leading in kinds of bloodshed. In fact, I think there's a hadith. I just paraphrase that particular hadith. I think it was developed, or it came out or emerged in the Abbasid context. But what's your take on the idea of revolution? I mean, on the one hand, a modern phenomenon arising out of France, and of course you see the revolution in Iran and so on and so forth. As an Imam, do you believe that this could possibly lead to, or should lead to, potential regime changes in the forms of revolutions where Muslims simply stand up and change the governments of their particular areas, or is the situation far more complex? You can no longer talk about a khilafah in the conventional sense. It just doesn't make sense in 21st century society. How would the average Muslim who's trying to maintain agency with the Quran, reads the Quran, wants to have an interpreted relationship with the text, how should he view these situations and scenarios, and in particular in relation to leadership within the Muslim world? And I understand it's a deep question, but if you kind of summarize it as a last parting point, kind of an advice to Muslims out there.
Well, with the couple of minutes that I have left, you asked a question that needs at least 20 or 30 minutes to answer. It has,
I do understand that, yeah.
Historical depth and all of this. And I think you had mentioned the Madkhalis as, a segment of the program previously. But anyway, it leads in that direction. And to put it, very shortly is, an Islamic leader is an Islamic leader. I mean, there has to be qualities to the person who leads. And those qualities, like he has to be at least versed in the Quran and in the teachings of the Prophet. And I think many of these individuals who have taken up responsibilities in Syria meet that criterion. But the other part of it is that they report to their own people, meaning they get their cues from their own people and not from those who have money and those who have power. That's been the problem with the class of ulama in the quote unquote Sunni world. They get their cues. They know what has to be done in all of this, but how do you go about doing this? Well, let's see what those people who have all this money have to say, and that other group of people who has all of this firepower have to say. Let's listen to what they have to say and then make up our minds. No, you don't listen to what they have to say. You pursue your Islamic course with a solid relationship with your Islamic base. That's the way it works. It doesn't work by behind the scenes contacts with the rich and the famous, so to speak, and then this cinematic presentation to the population of Islamic imageries and all of this. And it's not going to work that way. It will not work that way. And that one of the heartbreaking chapters in contemporary Islamic struggle everywhere is it's very difficult for Muslim decision makers to identify their mistakes and to correct themselves. That that has proven to be the most difficult thing as we followed the events, what was happening 12, 13 years ago in Egypt, what was happening in Syria, what was happening in Libya, in Tunisia, etc., etc. But they just can't learn from their mistakes. That's where we are. This, of course, the media plays a very important role, and right now the media is trying to give us this personality, El Julani personality. He's meeting with officials, he's giving statements, and he's smiling to the camera, and he took off his dashdasha and his aba, and he put on a three-piece suit with a tie to, to convince, now who is he trying to convince? That tells you a lot. That tells you a lot. If you take off your Islamic dress, you take that off, and you put on the suit, the three-piece suit, and the tie.
A tuxedo, like James Bond. Well, Imam, I do understand, and I appreciate your time, and I know you've had a bit of a commitment at this juncture. Allah bless you, and bless you and your family, and wish you well. And certainly, your voice and your message and your advice is much needed in these times when a lot of us out there grappling, wanting to find solutions to the existing problems in the Muslim world. So we will be having this conversation regularly, inshallah, in the future. If not soon, then in the coming new year in 2025. And we wish you all the best, certainly with the Quran. Get a copy of it if you haven't looked at it, The Ascendant Quran, Realigning Man to the Divine Power Culture. It is available in South Africa to the South African viewers. I do understand that it's also available in the United Kingdom, and certainly in the United States, and in Washington, D.C., where the Imam is based, and certainly engages in a lot of his research at the Institute of Contemporary Islamic Thought. So till then, Imam, all the best, and to viewers out there, this is Yusuf Ismail from the South African Debate Initiative, together with my good dear brother Muhammad from Coventry Faith Foundation in the United Kingdom, and Imam Al-Asi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. في أمان الله.
أشهد أن لا